Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here, and today I'm talking about the books that I've read this week. I'm going to be talking about 4 books in this video, and one of them actually I read a week ago, so it's just a bit of a belated one because I'm just slowly getting back into making sure I get my Friday videos up talking about what I've read. So I'll talk about that one first, and that is My Name is Leon by Kit DeWaal. This is an ARC copy that I picked up in a bookshop, but the actual cover is slightly different from this, so I shall put that up here. And I was expecting to love this. It's been very highly praised by a lot of people in BookTube. A lot of people have raved about this and loved it, and I can see why they have. However, it didn't fall quite as high up for me. I ended up giving this one 3 stars, and I enjoyed it. It was much slower than the type of book that I would normally read. I think that was one thing. And the other thing I think I struggled a little bit with was that I didn't have a strong enough emotional connection with our character. And although I did feel for him, for some reason, and unfortunately, this isn't the fault of the book, this is just my reading preference, I struggle often to connect with male protagonists. And I find it difficult to put myself in their shoes. Now, in this case, it was a little bit easier because our protagonist is quite young, and young children have similar traits no matter what gender, I feel anyway, but there are differences, and yeah, I struggled in that way. Let me tell you a little bit about the story. So we're following Leon, and he's a little boy, he's living with his mother. There's obviously something slightly off about his mother. She's obviously struggling to raise him, and at the very start of the story, in the first couple of pages, his baby brother Jake is born, and it becomes apparent that Jake has a different father. Leon is of mixed race, and his brother is white, and it is apparent that there's something going on with the mother and the father of Jake, and you're just sort of following the story about what's happening there. And push comes to shove, and Leon and Jake end up in temporary foster care, and then Jake is adopted because a couple want him. He's a baby, which is more popular for adoption, and he's white. And this is set in the 80s. At a time where race issues were quite a volatile issue, as it is in fact even today. And I grew up in the 80s, so there was some really interesting poignant mentions of various different things in there for me. But yeah, I just felt the lack of connection, and the story didn't move as fast or move along in a way that pulled me through enough. So that's the only reason that I gave it 3 stars. I think a lot of people will absolutely love this. So if the sort of the idea of this and the more character focused doesn't put you off, I think this would definitely be a good one for loads of people. Okay, so now I want to talk about the other 3-star read. So if you've been watching my June TBR and my Emoji-a-thon round 2 TBR that I'm doing with Janet, myself and Janet are reading a number of books we both have on our shelves. Our TBRs for June for the Shelf Slam are that we have to pick books that are new to us authors, and so myself and Janet have also incorporated Emoji-a-thon into that. So our first pick out of the jar for our Emoji-a-thon was The Baby, which is a book published in 2016 or 2017, and so we picked up The Girl of Ink and Stars by Kieran Millward Hargrave. This has won, I think it was the Waterstones Book Award, and it's a middle grade story, and from the outset I just thought the packaging of this book was amazing. There's a map, and then all through on the pages, you can't see it here, there are sort of little illustrations along the way, and I was really excited. It sounded like a really magical story. We're on an island called Joya, and we're following our main character Isabella. There's something happening on the island, and legends and myths that she has heard from her father growing up, and her father is a cartographer who makes maps and creates maps and has taught her how to do it. And she's heard stories from him about legends of their island, and myth and reality begin to blur and things happen. And as always in this type of story, Isabella is set on sort of an adventurous mission in order to save her friend. Along the way, she makes friends and acquaintances and discovers things about herself, and she goes on this journey. And I enjoyed this, but it just fell a little bit flat. So I feel like, as is many of the problems with middle grade, we take a long time to get to the sort of big ending, and the big ending lasts for just a few pages, and it all feels very wrapped up very neatly, and it just feels like it sort of, I don't know, it just ties up too well. And there was bits in this that at the end I felt like they hadn't explained parts of the story well enough for me. There was bits that were left hanging and I wanted to know more about. So I enjoyed it, and it was a fast read, but it was only 3 stars. So the next book I want to talk about was a book that I was kindly given for review on NetGalley, and that is Juniper Lemon's Happiness Index by Julie Israel, and I really enjoyed this. So we learn at the start of this story that Juniper has lost her sister in an accident, and she is using this these happiness index cards. And what they remind me of when they were talking about them in the story was those Erin Condren planner cards, you know, like people put in cards that have like quotes on and stuff. Well, from what I can gather, these are sort of index cards, so similar size to those, and on them every day she writes out positives and negatives. So it might be had pizza, and if pizza is something she loves, she would put a plus in, or if it was a really good thing, she'd put a double plus. And consequently, you know, a fight with my parents might be a triple minus, and she goes through her day putting positives and negatives, and we learn in the story why that is. And at the very start of the story, Juniper loses one of these cards that means so much to her, and also she discovers a letter in her sister's handbag which is sent from her sister to someone called you, and it transpires that something's been happening in her sister's life she didn't know of. And from what I can gather, her sister was just a year older and she was quite close to her, and her sister has been having this relationship with you, and it becomes Juniper's mission to uncover who you is so that she can make sense of what's going on. And she uses this as a sort of a tool to sort of work through her grief, and it's just following this story of her looking for you and the friends in her life, the friends she makes, how her life has changed, her grief and her process of getting through this. And I just thought it was really good. The family aspect in this was really strong. It was really important to see how the different members of the family, her parents, were coping, and how that affected the relationship they had with Juniper. And I really enjoyed this. It was a really interesting, fun, poignant read, and I gave it 4 stars. And then the final book I want to talk about this week is one of those books that I'm like, why did it take me so long to get to it? Why didn't I pick it up before? And the only reason I can think of is that I found it daunting. I found the subject matter daunting. So anyway, the book is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and I knew loads of people loved this. I've heard many a person discuss how much they loved it, and so it was about time I got to it. And it was the second pick for our emoji-a-thon. It was The Two Boys Holding Hands, the book with a hot topic or LGBTQIA plus themes, and this has homosexual themes in it. And the thing that's always put me off is that it's set in ancient Greece at the time where there are gods and men, and we're following Patroclus, who, I think that's how you say it, Patroclus, who ends up exiled from his home and as a prince into the home of Achilles. Patroclus and Achilles end up growing up together and forming a friendship, forming more than a friendship, and it's following the story of Achilles and Patroclus. We're really following Achilles' destiny and how Patroclus plays a part in that, but the biggest part of this is their relationship. And the biggest thing I can say to you, if you've been put off because you've thought, oh, ancient Greece, that's going to be a bit heavy going, Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey, this is a general fiction page turner. It is on par with reading, and in not terms of its subject matter, but in terms of like its readability, like a thriller. It was just so page turning. Me and Janet read this in just over a day. Janet is a self-proclaimed slower reader than me, and she couldn't put it down either, and it was just really good. The first half of the book was well on its way to being a 5 stars, and unfortunately for me, the part of the war, which was years, like 15 years long or whatever, this Trojan War, just made it a little bit draggy in places, and so I ended up giving it 4 stars. But if I was going to sort of give it a little point, it would be 4.5. I really enjoyed this, and it was really interesting to find out a bit more about the Trojan War. One thing I will say is there is a lot of characters, a lot of princes mentioned, and I think I didn't let myself get too bogged down with, you know, actually who they were and what their backstories were. But I think if you were interested in Greek history, it would be quite interesting then to go off and follow perhaps the stories of each of these different Greek heroes, or, you know, Greek princes and kings, and some of their stories. So it's definitely something that has made me want to pick up some more books in this vein, and I'm really pleased I finally got to it. So anyway, that's everything that I've read this week. I hope you've all had a good reading week. I'm feeling really positive about my reading at the moment, so that is excellent, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.